There we go. The glare on the canvas is pretty bad at this point, so I have you set off at an angle to try to mitigate against that somewhat. I've already done some drawing. At the moment, I'm using a dark, slightly dirty purple color. And at the moment, doing this, all I've done is 1, 2, 3, 4 people here, and the table setting, the table decorations in front of them here. I'm way down in the corner of the painting, so I certainly don't want to get bogged down in detail down here. Let me move up to this man. And again, I have the luxury, which I rarely have when I'm painting at a reception. I have the luxury of having a photograph to look at. So the people in the photograph are cooperating quite nicely by holding still for me this whole time. Quite a nice treat. So I can actually capture them a little better than normal. But I don't want to get too far down that path. Don't want to get stuck, fastidiously copying, rendering. It will be overdrawn if I do that. One of the safeguards against that then for me is to force myself to use my left hand. Be careful not to get, even my left hand is, it can in some ways almost draw as well as my right. It still doesn't feel the same when I draw. It still feels very left-handish, whatever that means. Let's be sure this one's a woman here. There we go. And the back of a person here. And the back of his distinctive chair. Now we're going to have musical entertainment by Izzy, my grandson. Such is family life, eh? And here's an empty chair way over here. I'm going to do 2 things. Typically, I do 2 things after I'm drawing now with transparent dark oil. Hey, Lakey Poo. And one thing I will do after this is scratch much of this and find the chip brush handles are fantastic for scratching. The other thing I will do is come back and reinforce some of these lines with colored pencils. So 2 things, colored pencil and scratching. I want to indicate a dark area underneath this table. And I do not know why these chairs are empty. When I'm painting a reception, I very often, typically, paint some chairs in the foreground that are definitely empty. And usually, that's a fiction. Usually the chairs are not empty. The reason I make empty chairs is because if somebody was sitting on it, they would be blocking too much of the scene. But in this case, the chairs actually are empty. So, to make them so is actually a bit of reality. Now, I can't tell if this is supposed to be a person here or not. I guess it is. They sure are skinny. So let's see what happens if I widen them up a good bit. And make it a man to boot, a man facing away from us. I say that because a man, of course, would be wider than the woman, so There is, of course, a little bit too much purple in all of this drawing. In fact, let me shift the color of my paint right now, adding brown and blue to it, so it's a much more neutral color now. I'm trying to decide whether this should be a person or no. Yeah, I think not. So I'm just going to leave the chair empty and leave it quite abstract, of course, because it's way down here in the corner. So I don't want a lot of energy or a lot of attention drawn. Several things draw attention in a painting. Several things are energy bearers. You all know this. Let me repeat it. One is contrast. So, like, here's a light spot right next to some dark. That's drawing a lot of attention. There'll be more of that up here as I proceed. So that's one thing. Another thing that draws attention is bright color. So here I've got a very bright color, very close to the bottom of the canvas, which is a good guess that it will not continue to be that bright. I just surprisingly put a person in one of those empty chairs I talked about earlier. So one is contrast, 2 is color, 3 is psychological. Anytime there's a person, it draws attention. There's energy, in this case not visual but psychological energy when we put a person. And then there's lines of convergence. So whenever there's 2 major lines coming together at the focal point there, like for instance a head here, is going to get quite a bit of attention, even though it's quite simple, simply because of these major shapes converging. I'm going to make 2 heads that will help diffuse, so I don't have one all by itself. Okay, and I think this is going to be the bride and groom, although they're very far from bride and groomish right now. I'm going to put a person back here in the background. Did I finish? Things that attract attention, things that are energy, contrast, color, convergence, and personality, or animated creature. Even a dog or a cat or a living creature counts, draws attention to itself. If you're painting a great big field, and the field is completely big, rolling green hills, the field's completely empty except for one duck, one horse, one cow, one cat, one dog, whatever it may be. That one creature is going to exercise an unusual amount of influence on the scene, simply because it's a living being, a living creature. So it doesn't even have to be people. Even animals do this. Several years ago, I did a very nice painting, and I don't say that, it's one that stands out in my history. A very nice painting of interior of Duke Chapel. The interior of Duke Chapel, a huge, Gothic, beautiful, European-looking, church at Duke University, and it was a huge painting. It was about 7.5 feet tall and 4 feet wide, approximately over 4 feet wide, I think. And it had, again, very loosely drawn pews, church pews, right? Going off almost into infinity. That it was a great sense of space. And I had the presence of mind while I was doing that painting to put one solitary person, head and shoulders only, viewed from the back, one person in that vast expanse of, of a Gothic interior. And it was a good stroke. It was a good call, because that one figure, it gave the painting quite a melancholy air, which was just perfect for the beauty and majesty of the building itself. To have just a little bit of animation in it, but not too much. It wasn't a whole crowd full of people, just one person, no detail at all, just the back of the head and shoulders. And I'd often thought that was a good call. That painting hung around in my studio for years because none of my galleries can handle a painting 7 feet tall. But the first time I had the opportunity to show it, I'm happy to say it sold immediately for a decent price. Very happy to report that. Wish it was always that easy. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, after I'm getting close to finished, the next thing I'm going to do here is some, as I said, some scratching and or some colored pencil. I don't know which. But first, I want some lines, very subtle lines going through this space. Some of the lines, like that one, are electric wires with lights hanging down from them. Let's go ahead and do the sockets. I'll come back and do the lights later. Then there are some just, I guess, seams in the plastic. I'm not really sure what they are. But I want it to feel like a tent without really painting the tent. I'm not going to paint the plastic per se. But I want just enough. I got to go ahead and scratch that because that's already. By the way, let me give you a tip on scratching. Scratching is particularly effective when you put down a line, like with paint, like you've seen me doing here for the last several minutes, and that line is a little too heavy. For instance, let me zoom in here so you can see this. Let me just show you a good trick. Okay, hang on, bear with me for just a minute. Woohoo! I zoomed in too far. There we go. Okay, I want to show you here, for instance, here's a line that's a little bit heavy, and I simply take this and scratch it out like that. And I've actually now turned that into 2 lines, or 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. Neutral, hit the dark, cross the dark, edge, edge, edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. I've suddenly made that one fairly simple mark much more visually rich, visually complex. Although the word complex is troublesome, because people tend to, when I say complex, it tends to have the connotation of overly busy. We certainly don't want overly busy. But rich, visually rich is a better word. Okay, anything else? Yeah. Another diagonal up here. Now I don't know which of these diagonals, or which of these lines I'm going to keep and which ones I'm going to throw out. Time will tell. A big part of the final charm of this painting will be the sparkly lights. The candles on the table and the strings of lights suspended in the ceiling. I want it to feel enchanted. I want it to feel sparkly, because that is, in fact, very much how the reception felt. Of course, that was the goal of the designing team. They knew what they were doing. They know how to make something look and feel enchanting. And a big part of it is sparkly, twinkly lights. Interesting. As an artist, and this spills over into, I'm not sure, psychology or anthropology or something like that. The human mind, the human eye, and by that I mean the seeing part of the brain, is very much attracted to little points of light. That's why intuitively like, Christmas lights, Hanukkah lights. Hello, friends. Let me turn you around here. So, for some reason, YouTube decided to quit on me. Sorry about that. It does that sometimes. So I've finished my dark layer. The next thing I'm going to do, and I finished scratching. I don't know if you saw any of that or not. I scratched with the handle of one of my chip brushes, which is one of the reasons I like the chip brushes so well. And the next step is going to be some more lines with pencils. Again, not because I need to draw. I really don't need really much, if any, drawing to be done in this painting. But I like the lines. I like the texture that the pencils create. Very unconventional, by the way, in case you're thinking, isn't that weird that he's doing pencil on top of an oil painting? The answer is yes. Absolutely weird. Absolutely weird. Very, very unconventional. So don't do it if you want to do convention. Just do it if you think it looks cool. That might be all I do. I'm talking about doing it, and here I am doing it while I'm talking, and that might be enough. One of the things I do like about pencil is making these random streaks like that. Just a little bit more energy and chaos. And I'm surprised how much like that, those lines, random lines like that, I'm always surprised. And the final layer when I'm doing opaque and I can cover up whatever I don't like, I'm always surprised how many of those random lines I actually do like. But if you don't put them there in the first place, you don't have the option of keeping them, right? I have the option of blocking them out, but having nothing is easy. Having something requires you to do something. Did that make sense? Okay, I'm not even going to explain it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back either tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. Bye-bye.